Okay, so we are on the value example now for your meaningful still life projects. Okay, so I went ahead and skipped the part where I drew the contour lines. If you want to watch that, you need to go back and watch the stippling demo because I did demonstrate that in the video there. To save some time, I already have all of my contour shapes. Okay, so again, if you were doing a pencil drawing, isolate your darkest values, just like we have done with the stippling and our practice sessions. Okay, you can isolate them by drawing the value shape. Okay, you can isolate them by just finding the darkest values first. Okay, so I have a nice little dark value shape here. Of course, the brush is going to be a very dark value shape. Okay, let's say it even extends out a little farther. Okay, so I'm just outlining anything that I think is going to be darkest in this picture. Okay, again, you could just choose to go right in there and shade in those areas first. That would be another choice you can make. Okay, so for this video and for time's sake, I'm going to pretty much be working right on the hat area of the video. Okay, so again, we're going to vary our pressure. So I'm going to go in here with this darkest value in my darkest areas. Okay, remember to think of your basic forms and refer back to those if you're not sure how to shade it. So for example, you know, as I've spoken earlier, this hat, the top of the hat here is very similar to like a cylinder form. Okay, so I could refer in, you know, back to my basic forms and maybe refer a little bit into what my cylinder form looked like and utilize that to help me place the values if I need it. Remember, you can also use your value pencil kits. All right. Or, you know, if you feel like you just want to go with what you feel like is the most simple approach, you know, I'm using one pencil here. I am using one pencil, and I'm going to achieve all of my values with this one pencil. So that can certainly be a sort of fun challenge. Okay, just depends on what works for you, what works for your materials too, what works for the aesthetic that you want. Okay. You will see I'm refining some of my shapes too, you know, in the contour drawing, you know, I'm just kind of getting the basics on there. And, you know, now I can go in there and be a little bit more choosy about things. It's also why it's great to start in pencil. It's very easy to erase, change, manipulate. I'm really making sure to get around these edges that I feel like are deep values. Now I draw pretty fast. You know, I shade in pretty fast, I paint pretty fast. That's just because I've had a lot of experience. Do not feel like you need to go as fast as me. In fact, you probably shouldn't because you've had less experience. I also just like to go a little bit faster so you guys can get a better idea, a little faster, of my process. Okay, obviously I have this nice paintbrush here. That's like one of my darkest values. Got some nice little value shapes on the silver part there. Okay, so just kind of making sure to push those value shapes as I see them. This part is really quite dark, but then we have some nice highlights where it's metallic. A little bit of a reflection there. Always make sure to pay attention to overlapping forms. As you can see, I had a sort of tricky setup, and I actually had to rework it a little bit because, you know, I put this mason jar like on top of the hat. So I had to kind of make sure that I had that layering in there correct. So it's on top of the brim, right? But the cap of the hat is actually in front of it. Nice little dark value shape here. So if you do have anything glass, I mean, I find that to be kind of a fun challenge because you're gonna have a lot of reflections in glass. Paying attention to my positive and negative shapes here. So for example, you know, inside my brushes, that's a negative shape. That's a place where I do not have an object, okay? But translating that into a shape gives me a lot of information about what my value shape looks like. So pay attention not only to where your objects are, but where your objects are not, and what that space looks like, what the void of the objects not being there looks like. Okay. Okay. And you will see I'm doing a lot of like contouring here. So, you know, just like contouring, you know, with your makeup, you want to make your forms more refined. So it is really the same idea in art. We are refining the forms so that they are more round, so that they are more straight, so that they are more, you know, cubular, depending on what it is you're drawing. So do not be afraid to go in there and darken edges so that things pop forward. In a value study, that's very important, that we can tell what is on top of what. And just remember to do your best. We're all learning here, okay? Your goal should always be that it just represents the objects that you have. That doesn't necessarily mean it looks like a photograph of the objects. You've represented it in your own artistic style, and that is an okay place to be. Okay, all right. You will notice I've broken down this very fancy lacy form into some pretty basic shapes. Okay. All right, so this is gonna conclude your value example. So, you know, you're gonna continue moving on with your forms. I can see now that I have a pretty good, you know, value study of the hat and the brushes. And then I'm gonna continue working on the other shapes and forms. And then eventually I will start to add the colored background. So just for a quick contrast, you know, here we have our value study in the pencil, and then we have our value study with the stippling technique. So pick the one that is interesting you the most.